Welcome to the start of our girls volleyball sectional preview section of ANEC Sports as we cover 65 schools across Northeast Indiana, Elkhart County, Fort Wayne, and parts of Marion, Indiana. So we first start with 1A Sectional 55. This will be hosted by Northfield, the Northfield Norse of Wabash, Indiana, and the sectional will begin tomorrow when Northfield takes on Cowan. Northfield's a 20-win team this season, and Cowan coming in with 10 wins on the season. Northfield's a pretty solid team playing the Three Rivers Conference, and this is a team with some height, pretty solid team athletically speaking, and all things considered, they're going to be a team that's going to make a decent run in the state tournament. A player to watch for Northfield is going to be their sophomore middle, Emily Miller. Miller has 95 blocks on the season for Miss Miller. She also leads with 333 kills. Senior setter Brinley Slyhart has 568 assists on the season. Bella Myers, their junior libero, 347 dids for the Norse of Northfield. I think all things considered, the height is going to be an advantage for Northfield. They're a pretty young team, but they're also a very athletic team, and I think, to me, that athleticism is going to be a huge advantage against Cowan. Not a terrible 1A team, but when you're facing against Northfield, I think that's going to be a disadvantage for Cowan, the Blackhawks of Cowan. And I expect Northfield to advance on Tuesday nights, and I expect them to take on North Miami in that sectional. We'll talk about North Miami in a matter of moments. I just want to make sure I make this real quick here. We're mainly just going to talk about the ANEC area schools and then any other team that is relevant in the sectional. We're not going to mention any of the bad teams. So we're not going to mention Tri-Central. We're not going to mention Cowan. No, and we're not going to mention Westdale. Westdale's a young team. They've only won 9 games this year. I'm not going to waste my time with talking about those teams. I'm only going to mention teams that are relevant in this sectional. So you look at the bottom half of the bracket. You got Daleville taking on Tri-Central. That will be on Thursday. That'll be the first game of that sectional. And I mean, Daleville is going to be the team I think is going to be a team to watch in this sectional. They have 16 wins on the season. They've been a contender for a while in this sectional. They have a girl on that Daleville team that's pretty respectable outside hitter. Their junior, Madeline Reese. She's got 346 kills, 60 aces on the season for Madeline Reese. Daleville should advance past Tri-Central on Thursday night, and then they'll await the winner of Westdale and Southern Wells. I think this is a team that, if they can obviously overcome the talent of Southern Wells, I think they're going to be a team that could at least compete for the sectional championship. But I think the draw is not ideal for Daleville on paper because of the team they could likely play on Saturday, and that's probably going to be Southern Wells. Southern Wells just swept Westdale last week. They just completed their first ever winning regular season in the history of Southern Wells girls volleyball. They have won 16 games, which is unheard of for that school in girls volleyball, and a lot of it has to do with the continued success that we saw last year when a lot of those girls that are now sophomores were freshmen, and we're seeing that right now with Southern Wells. When we talk about Southern Wells girls volleyball, there are 3 names we have to mention with the Southern Wells Raiders: Abby Powell, Kaylee Davis, Sydney Alstoft. Abby Powell is the sophomore middle blocker. She does not play like a typical 1A area high school athlete on the volleyball team. She's just not your typical 1A volleyball athlete. She's not. She's going to be a Division I player. If you look at the numbers, if you've seen her play, she is going to be a Division I prospect at some point in her career. When you look at Powell, the middle, 434 kills. She's already got over 700 careers. She's already surpassed the program record for kills in her career. 434 kills, 78 aces, 70 blocks, and she's hitting a state best 577. That's the best hitting percentage in all of Indiana. And I think it's only second or third maybe in the entire country. I'm not 100% sure but on that one, but she definitely has the state record for the season, 577 hitting percentage. It leads the entire state of Indiana. Kaylee Davis, their sophomore defensive specialist, she's got 327 digs. And then Sydney Alstoff, the senior setter, 630 assists. She just picked up her 1,000th assist last week. I believe it was on a Thursday against Adams Central, where the Raiders won their first and only conference match in a 4-setter against the Jets of Adams Central. I think Southern Wells, in terms of athleticism, their height, They're going to have an advantage against Westdale. I don't think Westdale has the athletes of Southern Wells. I don't think they have the height of Southern Wells as well. And I think that's going to show on Thursday when these two meet in the second game in that sectional for that day. I think the question is going to be for Southern Wells to win this sectional. I think a lot of it is going to hinge on, obviously, they're going to need Powell to play extremely well. You need to play good defense, led by Kaylee Davis and Powell. Powell also has 310 dids, all off with 167. The thing's going to be they're going to have to serve the ball well. They're going to have to be sharp on the offensive side of the ball. They do make some mistakes. They are kind of a mistake pro team at times, offensively speaking, but this is a talented team, so the talent kind of outweighs some of the mistakes that Southern Wells does make. I think one player that could be an X factor in the sectional could be another middle in Kyla Shelley. She's not too far behind her in terms of blocks and kills. Shelley has 152 kills, and she's not too far behind that. In terms of blocks, she's got, let's see here, 19 blocks. So obviously, the Southern Wells is going to need some timely contribution from everybody, I think, to win this sectional, which they've never won a sectional girls volleyball before. But my thing about it is they have the talent to win this sectional. And then you got North Miami. They've won 20 games this year. They are not too far behind Pioneer in terms of the class of the Hoosier North Athletic Conference. They were ranked at one point in 1A, so they are a pretty good volleyball team. They've been good for quite some time. And they got a couple of girls at North Miami that are going to be a problem in this sectional, one of which is going to be Zoe Sparks. They're a senior on the back row. She's got 297 dids on the season. And then you have the other Sparks, which is Chloe Sparks, their setter. She's got 555 assists on the season. And then you got probably maybe the next closest really good offensive player to that of Abby Powell, which is Grace Sailors, their senior middle blocker, 371 kills, 67 blocks, and a 373 hitting percentage. So North Miami's got some good size. They're a pretty athletic team. They're going to play some good defense. They're a pretty experienced team, as I mentioned earlier, with North Miami. I think the Warriors may have the edge. I think they're just I think that might be just a little bit better all around than some of the teams in that sectional. But I think this is a pretty competitive sectional, all things considered, because I think when you look at where things stand in 1A sectional 55 in this particular sectional, I think you can make an argument for, we're talking, 3 teams potentially to win that sectional, maybe? So in terms of this sectional, this is what I have in terms of the sectional pairings. Again, these are just my predictions. Don't take them personal. This is just my opinion. I expect to be wrong. All right, so we look at the section. We start at the top half of the bracket. I like Northfield. I think they'll take care of Cowan. I would expect this to be a sweep. I would be pretty surprised if it's a 4-set match. I like Northfield for sure in that one. Daleville, Tri-Central. Daleville should sweep Tri-Central. No disrespect to Tri-Central, but Daleville is definitely the better team. Southern Wells, Westdale. I think of those first-round games, I think the Westdale game could potentially go 4. I don't necessarily see it. I think Southern Wells should sweep Westdale, but I wouldn't be too shocked if it does need a 4-set. But I like Southern Wells in that one. And then you get to the second round, North Miami against Northfield. So you got the host Northfield taking on North Miami. I think this one could potentially go the distance. I think Northfield's got some athletes. I think Emily Miller is definitely a problem on paper for North Miami. I think that she could be a problem for the Warriors in this matchup. I'm going to take North Miami. I think this goes 5. I think that might be the most competitive game in that sectional. Daleville, Southern Wells, I think this one should be competitive. In the end, I'm going to take my chances. I like what I've seen from Southern Wells. This is their best season in program history. Why not continue this momentum into the championship game? I like Southern Wells in 4 over Daleville. And then in the championship game between North Miami and Southern Wells, that's what I'm projecting. Unfortunately, this is where Southern Wells' run comes to an end. I think North Miami does just enough. I think it's going to be a competitive championship game on paper, but I'm going to say North Miami in a very close 4 sets. I think the Warriors get it done in this sectional. We continue our coverage of girls volleyball sectionals with a look at 1A sectional 52. This will be hosted by Lakewood Park. Lakewood Park Christian's located in Auburn, Indiana. Reminder that we're Mainly going to talk about the ANEC area teams, particularly the ones that are going to be relevant contenders in the sectional, as well as any other team that is a contender that we should mention here. Other teams that have not had great seasons, I'm going to keep them extremely brief. For instance, for this particular sectional, Fremont, who won the sectional last year, definitely a down season for Fremont, 5-20 on the season for the Fremont Eagles. I mean, Mallory Huffnagel is a pretty solid junior. Okay, Chloe Burton's a decent libero junior. Kaylee Newen-Schwander is a solid outsider as a junior for Fremont. But all things considered, this is a down season for the Fremont Eagles. So they didn't get a good draw in the sectional, or they'll have to take on the Canterbury Cavaliers. But that's all I'm going to really go beyond the fact. We're going to primarily just mention Lakewood Park and Canterbury because those are probably going to be the contenders in the sectional. We think this is going to come down to those two teams. We'll start with Lakewood Park. 15-10 on the season. They have not won a sectional since 2020. It's been 5 years since they last won a girls volleyball sectional. Lakewood Park does have a good history of volleyball, even though it's a relatively younger program than some of the other established teams out there. This is definitely a pretty solid program that they've built over the years at Lakewood Park. Some names I want to mention from Lakewood Park. I want to mention Delaney Johnson, their senior libero, 45 aces, 450 dids. Amelia Kreider, just a freshman. She's an opposite hitter. She can play setter. She can play on the back row. She does a little bit of everything for Lakewood Park. 204 kills, 42 aces, 193 dids, and 140 assists. Against Canterbury in the second meeting, which was the actual regular season meeting, not the tournament. She had a triple-double in the 5-set win over Canterbury. So something to note there as we start mentioning Lakewood Park and Canterbury more closely. Evie Gravante is a senior setter. She's got 409 assists. Claire Golm, a junior middle, 38 blocks. Lakewood Park drew Bethany Christian in the first round of the sectional. That's a team they took care of business easily in the first time around in the regular season, a 3-set win there. The winner of that game will play Lakeland Christian Academy, a 5-win LCA squad, and definitely not the best team in the world there. And I think Lakewood Park should, I wouldn't say walk their way to the championship game, but they should have a pretty easy time getting there, I think, on paper. But obviously, you got to take care of the games first, right? On the other half of the bracket, you have Fort Wayne Canterbury, who's now a member of the Hoosier Plains Conference. I did not know that until maybe a week ago, but Canterbury is a member of the Hoosier Plains Conference, which is weird saying that. They drew the Fremont Eagles in the second game of the Thursday night doubleheader. Lakewood Park's a 6 o'clock game. Canterbury's matchup against Fremont is a 7:30 contest. And Canterbury's having a nice year. 16 wins on the season for the Fort Wayne Canterbury Cavaliers. Definitely a much better season than what we have seen in recent years from Canterbury. A lot of it is just a resurgence of talent, particularly from their underclassmen. They swept Fremont. They swept Fremont in that tournament way back in the first weekend of the season at Lakewood Park. That was a true set sweep for Canterbury. They have not met since that game. But Canterbury, 16-8 on the season. They have won 3 of the last 5 games. They finished second in the Hoosier Plains Conference, trailing only to Elkhart Christian Academy. And Canterbury's got a nice squad with this Canterbury team. We start with Letza Cobble, the junior middle. She does a little bit of everything at the middle. 270 hitter, 39 blocks, 68 aces for Cobble. She also has 184 kills. So she's approaching 500 in her career, and she's only a junior. Pretty solid player there for the Cavaliers. You got a solid sophomore that can play outside hitter and can play some defense in Victoria Kim. Kim, for her sophomore year, 327 kills, 272 dids, hitting 211, which is decent. 53 aces for Victoria Kim. And then you have Sophia Miller, their sophomore setter, at 591 assists. I want to mention these two teams specifically because they have this would be their third meeting of the season. They met back on the first weekend of the season in the Lakewood Park Invitational, to which Lakewood Park did take care of business in a sweep against Canterbury in the first meeting, although it was a close first set against Canterbury. And in that game, you had Brooklyn McFarland, their sophomore middle. She had 7 kills in that contest. You had, Kim only had 5 kills. She had a rough game that game. Sophia Miller had 5 kills, 556 in that first meeting. And then in the second matchup between these two teams, I should say, that went to a 5-set thriller. in that contest. And that came, just 10 days later? That was August 26th. And Lakewood Park, they came back. Well, actually, Canterbury came back from being down 2-1 to force the fifth set. Lakewood Park won the fifth set 15-12. And it was a highly contested contest. Cobble had 14 kills. She had 333. Claire Golem with 10 kills at 588. Victoria Kim had 21 kills. Amelia Kreider had triple-double, which includes 12 kills and 23 assists, hitting 478. Cobble also had 3 blocks. Golem with 4 blocks. So this was a highly contested ball game between these two teams, and we expect that to be the case in the sectional. We expect these two teams to play for the sectional championship because I think the matchups, the pairings certainly favor both Lakewood Park and Canterbury. I think it's going to be a coin toss. You flip the coin and see what happens, but it's going to come down to which team has the edge. I'm going to say I think Lakewood Park may be just a hair better in certain areas than Canterbury. I mean, just a hair better. I think these two teams are so identical to each other. It's not even funny. They're that close to each other. They're that good. These two teams are that close to each other, that similar in terms of what they play. I think they may have just enough of an edge there to get past Canterbury. I'm expecting 4 or 5 sets. That's how competitive this game is going to be. But Lakewood Park being at home, I think that the Panthers are going to win. In my opinion, I predict the Panthers to win their first girls volleyball sectional since 2020. We continue our sectional coverage. We'll look at 1A sectional 51. This will be hosted by South Central Union Mills. That's not too far west of where North Judson and Knott's are at, so they're in the central time zone. For those who are wondering, just be aware of that. If you are to attend that sectional, it is at South Central Union Mills, and they have a slight time change in terms of where the time zone's at over there, so just be aware of that. I want to make sure I make this very clear that we're only going to talk about teams that are relevant in the sectional. We're not talking about every single team. I just do not have time for that. And this sectional in particular, I'm very much less familiar with the sectional because we only cover really Elkhart Christian, and that's very little that we're able to cover Elkhart Christian. So we're not that experienced in understanding all these teams in sectional. We're not going to waste our time really talking about most of these teams. We may mention a name from some teams, but we're really just going to focus on the teams that are relevant in the sectional, and that's that. When you look at the sectionals, it begins tomorrow at 5:30 p.m., at least Eastern time. Triton will take on Culver, and these are two rivals in the Hoosier North Athletic Conference. Triton is a 20-win team. Culver's won 17. These two should be a pretty decent match, I would say. They're in the same conference. Two schools, pretty decent volleyball programs over the years between these two schools. I'm trying to remember how the first meeting went between the two. Hold on a second here. Triton swept Culver on September 4th, 3 straight, but they did lose to Culver in a tournament matchup in 2-0. So they've already met twice. They're going to meet a third time between these two teams, and these are two contenders in the Hoosier North Athletic Conference, as I mentioned earlier. I believe Pioneer won the Hoosier North Athletic Conference. Triton wasn't too far behind them, but Pioneer, I know, won the conference. So when we look at that sectional, it's primarily going to be led by, for Triton, to be led by Avery Veers, their senior outside hitter, with 411 kills. Senior setter Clara Dahl has 492 assists, and then their senior defensive specialist Sierra Hawley with 348 dids. So it's a senior latent squad at Triton. Culver, not as talented as Triton on paper, but they do have a couple decent players. I'm going to mention one name in particular, and that's Gracie Milam, their senior libero, 323 dids. So should be an interesting matchup. I think this is probably going to be somewhere in the middle. I like Triton in 4, but I could see this kind of go either way. I think it's going to depend on how Culver's able to contain Avery Veers. I think that's going to be the key for the Culver Cavaliers. You look at the rest of that particular sectional. The rest of the first round games will begin on Thursday. North Judson will take on Ardos at 5:30 p.m. Also rivals in the Hoosier North Conference. One name to mention from North Judson. There we go. I kind of lost it for a minute. One name I do want to mention from the North Judson Blue Jays is Grace Craig, their senior middle hitter, 131 kills. She's definitely the best player on the offensive side of the ball, and she will be heavily relied on against Ardos. They should advance in this game. I'll be quite honest with you. Ardos, I think, only has a couple wins this year. Yeah, only 4 wins this year for Argos, so North Judson should advance. Now, the first round game I'm most intrigued by is the 7 o'clock contest between South Central Union Mills and Elkhart Christian Academy. At 7 o'clock, the host satellites of South Central taking on ECA. These two met not too long ago, actually. They met, it would have been around late August, if I remember. Let's take a look real quick. Let's see. These two met actually September 4th, so just around past Labor Day. These two met on September 4th, with ECA coming away with a 3-2 5-set thriller against the satellites of South Central Union Mills. We expect this to be competitive once again, and you look at these two teams again, much like with Triton Culver, pretty senior-laden teams. Their seniors are pretty much relied on for both of these teams. For Elkhart Christian, I think a lot of it is going to hinge on the success of senior outside hitter Riley Veront, the senior outside hitter for the Elkhart Christian Academy Eagles. She is going to have to play well. She's closing on 900 kills in her career, closing on 240 career aces. She just got 1,000 dids earlier this year. She's approaching 1,300 career dids, and she's also at over 1,400 career assists. So she does pretty much everything but the kitchen sink for the ECA Eagles. 78 aces, 381 dids, 430 kills on the season. How well Riley Veront goes will determine how far Elkhart Christian goes. She has to be their best player for them to win this sectional. It's pretty much cut dry with ECA. You look at South Central Union Mills, they have 13 wins on the season. ECA had 18 coming into this week. South Central's at 13. They are a pretty battle-tested team, and so I've seen that from their schedule. They played some pretty tough teams for the satellites of South Central Union Mills. They're also a senior lane team as well. McKenna Welsh, their senior outside hitter, has 264 kills. Brooklyn Jones, their senior setter, 615 assists. And Gwen Mendenhall, their senior defensive specialist, has 349 dids. So this should be a fun first-round matchup. I expect this to once again go 5 sets because it happened the first time around. I'm expecting more of the same. I don't think it's going to be too much different from that first meeting, so it should be a fun first-round matchup. In terms of the whole section as a whole, I think Triton wins in 4 against Culver. North Judson, I think, sweeps Ardos. I like Elkhart Christian in 5 against South Central Union Mills. In the semifinals, I'm going to take Triton to sweep Oregon Davis. I'll take Elkhart Christian to beat North Judson in 4. And in the championship game between Triton and Elkhart Christian, this should be an intriguing matchup, but overall, I'm going to take the Triton Trojans to win in 4 and winning the sectional championship in 51. We continue our girls volleyball sectional coverage with a look at 2A sectional 40, hosted by Madison Grant. Madison Grant is right down in Fairmount, Indiana, just in the county borderline between Grant County and Madison County. They're not located in Selma. I don't know why Match Preps has Selma there. That's Wapahani. I'm pretty sure that's Wapahani, so that's not correct. Madison Grant is located basically in Fairmount, Indiana, which is weird I'm seeing that. But anyway, that's here and there. Keep in mind, we're only going to mention the contenders in each sectional. We're not going to talk about every single team because personally, we're going through like 16 sectionals or something like that. I am not going to go through every team. I just don't have the time for that. So we take a look at this sectional. There's only going to be 2 first-round games. They'll both take place on Thursday at 6 o'clock. We have Wapahani against Madison Grant. I'm going to hold off talking about Wapahani until we get to the second-round matchup because Muncie Burris drew the bye, and all things considered, it's going to be Wapahani or Muncie Burris. I'd be shocked if it's somebody else other than those two. They are definitely far and away the best teams in the sectional. Wapahani is going to sweep Madison Grant. I'd be shocked if it goes 4 sets. Madison Grant is just nowhere near the competition of Wapahani in that sense. The second game, however, will be a more intriguing game, and that's Eastbrook and Alexandria, the 8 o'clock contest, 2 CIC rivals. And Eastbrook got a pretty good draw, and same for Alexandria. So the winner of this game is probably going to get to the championship game, all things considered. Although Blackford did give Eastbrook some trouble in the regular season, went to 5 sets. Now, Eastbrook and Blackford are in the same conference. They're also rivals. It kind of makes sense, but all things considered, Eastbrook's or Alexandria, the winner of that game is probably going to win at least one. Is probably going to win at least the semifinal matchup as well and get to the championship game. A couple of names I want to mention for Eastbrook. I think Eastbrook's having a pretty solid season. 14-14 record, right at 500. Solid year for the Panthers, for the Eastbrook Panthers. It's a young Eastbrook team. Definitely a team that's going to be building for the future. And they're led by a freshman in Sloan Brown, 311 assists, 48 aces. And I think they have a junior in Addie Rust, 268 dids for Eastbrook. It's a scrappy Eastbrook squad. I think it's going to continue in the sectional. I have them I will be honest with you. I think Esport's going to have a decent run in the sectional tournament, especially if they get past Alexandria, all things considered. We take a look at Wapahani and Muncie Burrs. These are two powerhouse programs in the Muncie area. And anytime we talk about volleyball, anytime we talk about Muncie, we call it Muncie Anna for a reason. Muncie is the hotbed for volleyball for a very good reason. Wapahani, 23-6. They just won their conference once again. And this is a team that's really good. I mean, if it wasn't for that Muncie Burris is in the same sectional, we're talking about Wapahani winning the sectional, running away with it, right? They have three players we want to mention for Wapahani, and that's Caroline Huntsinger, their senior setter at 670 assists, Marion Hopkins, senior outside hitter with 257 kills, Callie Parker, their senior defensive specialist with 386 dids. The other team that we think is very likely going to compete in this state tournament is going to be the powerful Muncie Burrs with the most state championships in the history of high school girls volleyball, which Dave Shondell, once upon a time, once coached these powerful Muncie Burrs Eagles before he ended up becoming a legendary head coach for the Purdue Boilermakers. My Purdue Boilermakers. And we got the Muncie Burrs, I almost said Eagles, Muncie Burrs Owls, 19-7 on the season. They are independent, so they do not play in a conference, but it doesn't matter because they are really good at volleyball. And they've always been good at volleyball, it seems, from the Muncie Burrs Owls. And this team, they are big, they are athletic, they are incredibly deep, they're a well-rounded team, and they play some very relentless defense at Muncie Burrs. And they are led in part by a very good junior class, led by these three players: Addison Pierce, the junior setter, at 590 assists; Jamara Jackson, the junior middle hitter, at 261 kills; and then Piper Laney, their junior defensive specialist. She is at 287 dids. She also has 41 aces on the season. Jackson hitting 269. To me, it's going to come down to that second round matchup between Muncie Burrs and Wapahani, because these are definitely the two best teams in the sectional. Wapahani is probably the closest team to Muncie Burrs in terms of competition, in terms of talent. And you looked at that first matchup that took place back on, September 11th, so 9/11. Muncie Burrs swept Wapahani in a competitive 3 sets, no less. Muncie Burrs hit 257, Wapahani just 154 in that contest. 7 blocks for Muncie Burrs, just 4 for Wapahani. Burrs also had 63 dids, Wapahani with 41 dids. We expect a lot of dids in this contest, assuming these two do meet in the second round. The thing is going to come down to defense. It's going to come down to what happens in the front row. Can Muncie Burrs defense continue to cause problems for Wapahani? They're going to need Hopkins to play well. She only hit 174 against Muncie Burrs. Another player to mention that we have not mentioned yet is Cami Rivers. She had 7 kills against Muncie Burrs, and she hit 200. You also have a freshman in Wapahani and Noah Baker. She had 6 kills against Burrs. Wapahani has 7 aces in that contest. Muncie Burrs had 9, 4 of which came from senior Emmy Kukrotowicz. I butchered that. I apologize. I can't. Not necessarily the best at pronouncing names. I apologize. She also had 15 kills, hitting 212. So again, Muncie Burrs and Wapahani are two very deep teams. But again, it's going to come down to the defense. It's going to come down to the front row. It's going to come down to how well these two teams attack, and can they limit the mistakes there. It's going to come down to the size of these two teams, I think, and as well as the defensive pressure. Can the back row do its job and extend those plays and really put pressure on the defense of each team to make plays? And I think that's something to keep an eye on between Wapahani and Muncie Burrs. They're both deep teams. They both have talent. It's going to come down to just defense and going to come down to the play in front of the net. I think it's going to be key in this contest. I don't think it's going to be a 3-setter this time. I think this is going to be a much closer game this time around. These two teams have definitely improved upon since that game, and especially for Wapahani. I think this is going to be a game that Wapahani wants to play their best in the biggest stage, and so I expect this to be competitive. We take a look at the section as a whole. Again, I have Wapahani sweeping Madison Grant. That's not going to be a problem. I have Eastbrook beating Alexandria in 4. It could go to 5 sets, but I'm not really seeing that. I'm going to go Eastbrook at 4 once again. Muncie Burrs, Wapahani, I think this goes 4 or 5 sets this time, but I'm going to take Muncie Burrs to take care of business. I got Eastbrook beating Blackford in 3 this time around, but in the end, I got Muncie Burrs sweeping Eastbrook. I don't think it's going to be close. I like Muncie Burrs to win this sectional, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's Wapahani as well. We now take a look at 2A Sectional 38, hosted by the Wabash Apaches. Keep in mind, we're only going to mention the teams that are relevant in the sectional. Any other teams, we're going to keep them pretty brief in terms of any players that we want to mention, but overall we want to stick to just focusing on some of the teams we think are going to compete in the section. We take a look at 2A Sectional 38. The one that really sticks out to me in the sectional is going to be that first game tomorrow at 6 o'clock, where the Manchester Spires take on the Southwood Knights. Manchester, great season for the Spires, 23-7 on the season. They finished 7-2 in the conference, second place in the conference, trailing only to the powerful Southwood Knights, who won their 32nd Three Rivers Conference Championship, 26-3, 9-0 in the conference. Southwood has only lost at least one set, just one game since the end of August. Okay, so the only time Southwood has lost a set at all since September came just last weekend at Lawrence North. They lost in 2 sets to Class 4A Noblesville. Class 4A Noblesville. Southwood has not lost a set. Has not lost a set to a Class 2A school all season long. The only time they've lost a game, let alone sets, have come against schools that are in either 3A or 4A. And that is Crown Point, Indianapolis Cathedral, and Noblesville. All 3 of those teams are state contenders. Let that sink in for just a minute. The Southwood Knights are a state contender in 2A. They are number 2 in the state for a reason. They are not a fluke. They have done this every single year, it seems, with Southwood. They won state just 2 years ago in Class 1A. They made it to semi-state last year in 2A, and they lost in a shocking upset at the hands of Webo. That was an upset. That was a major upset in 2A. Nobody expected Webo to win that game. Nobody did. Nobody. So, Southwood's got a chip on their shoulder coming into the state tournament. They have dominated the 2A competition up to this point. And a lot of it comes to that they are an incredibly deep team. Like, you look down the lineup, and we'll mention the big names in just a moment. Hallie Pershing, Miley Dillon, Taylor Haker, Alexis Lopez, Presley Croft, right? Those are names at Southwood. Those are just some of the, we're just scratching the surface with just those names alone at Southwood. Every one of those guys, and every one of those players would be the best player on another team, not named Southwood. They are just role players at Southwood. They would be stars elsewhere. That's how good the Southwood team is that coach Tom Finnickle has built over the years at Southwood. But now let's mention the big names, the ones that everybody knows. And one of which is Shania Ramey, the junior outside hitter. She is going to Kentucky. That's right. She's going to an SEC school. She's going to a Power 5 school for a reason. 330 kills. She just recorded 1,000 career kill, just a junior. 254 dids, and she's hitting a solid 390. That's Shania Ramey. Addie Deanan, a junior setter, 698 assists. She picked up her 1,000th career assist. She's just a junior. And then Miley Dillon, we mentioned her earlier, 59 aces on the season. Southwood's a team that can hit, they can serve, they're great up front. They are also relentless on the back row. They are easily the most talented team in this sectional. And that's what made Southwood a prohibitive favorite to win yet another sectional championship. I'm sure all the Wabash people are going to be really excited about me talking about Southwood. Hadley West is a name they'll mention for Manchester, though. Manchester's definitely not as talented as Southwood, but they do have a couple decent names. Peyton Ream's another one. She has over 400 assists on the season. I believe she's a senior. The other senior is Hadley West, a defensive specialist with 384 dids. And that's that very first matchup between Southwood and Manchester. This one might be the most competitive game of the first round, at least for Southwood. At least for Southwood's case, probably the most competitive game that they'll face up to this point. But I think Southwood should sweep Manchester. They have not lost a set against either of these teams in the sectional. Again, they have not lost a set all year against 2A competition. That's how good Southwood is. In the Thursday night contest, we begin with the 6 o'clock contest between Lewis Cass and Oak Hill. All things considered, Oak Hill is a pretty big favorite in this matchup. They should beat Lewis Cass. And then the 8 o'clock contest between Wabash and Rochester, definitely the more competitive contest. Surprisingly, Rochester upset Wabash in the regular season in 5 sets just a couple weeks ago. So these two teams are still fresh in their mind in terms of what happened just a few weeks ago when Rochester upset the Wabash Apaches. I think it's going to be a much different outcome this time around with Wabash. This is again, much like with Manchester, great season from the Apaches, 25-6 on the season. 4 of those losses coming against TRC competition. 3 names I want to mention from Wabash, and it's a pretty senior leading team at Wabash. Briley Boggs, the senior outside hitter, 496 kills, hitting 270. She's got over 1,400 kills in her career. Maya Seller, senior defensive specialist with 418 DIDs. She is listed as a setter, but she's really a defensive specialist on this year's team. Maya Whitaker is the actual setter for the Wabash Apaches, 440 assists for her. She had 18 kills, I believe, against Oak Hill in that last matchup. We'll talk about that in a matter of moments. I think Wabash takes care of business this time around, and I think it's about a 4-set win for the Apaches, but it will be a competitive matchup no less. So, I want to take a look at just the overall sectional as a whole, just kind of predicting where things are going to stand in that sectional, in my opinion. Again, I think Southwood sweeps Manchester. I don't think it should be a problem. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say they'll sweep Eastern Greentown. No offense to the comments, but they are going to be no match for Southwood. It's not going to be a contest there. Oak Hill should sweep Lewis Cass. I got Wabash in 4 against Rochester. And then we get to that semifinal match between Oak Hill and Wabash, and that's going to be very intriguing to me because these two have already met twice, and Wabash has won both of those matches 2-1 in a tournament, and then they beat Oak Hill in 5 sets. You look at Oak Hill, and Oak Hill just won the Central Indiana Conference, 22-8 on the season for the Oak Hill Golden Eagles. And unlike the teams we mentioned up to this point, Oak Hill is actually not the senior-laden team as some of the other teams we mentioned. Southwood's not a very senior-laden team either. They've got a lot of juniors on that team. Oak Hill's got quite a few sophomores as well as some juniors kind of mixed in with the Oak Hill Golden Eagles. Morgan Cates, junior outside hitter, 325 kills, 47 aces on the season for Cates. London Frank, their sophomore setter, has 514 assists. And then Brianna Daly, just a sophomore middle, 293 kills, 87 blocks, folks. She is quite the talent up in the front row for the Oak Hill Golden Eagles, and they're going to be a tough team, I think, in this section, particularly at least through the first 2 rounds. They should be a tough out, and I think it's going to be an intriguing second-round matchup if these two teams meet, talking about Oak Hill and Wabash. But I do think Oak Hill does get the revenge, and I think they beat Wabash in 5, setting up a former TRC rivalry. They used to be rivals back in the TRC before Oak Hill moved to the CIC. Southwood and Oak Hill, I have them projected being in the finals. However, for Oak Hill, I don't like their chances against Southwood, even with the talent they have. It's still not to the level of Southwood. They're just too talented of a volleyball team. I have Southwood sweeping the entire sectional. I think they're going to be one of the top teams in 2A. They may even have a chance to even get to Gamebridge Fieldhouse. That is how good Southwood is. I think the Knights get it done. We take a look at 2A Sectional 36 hosted by South Adams in the beautiful Stardome in Bern, Indiana. We take a look at this competitive sectional class 2A. Keep in mind, we're only going to mention teams that are relevant in the sectional. We're going to be the legitimate contenders in this sectional. We're not going to talk about every single team. I know we talk in depth about these teams, at least the better teams in this area, but unfortunately, we only have time to only mention just the contenders here. We're going to go ahead and kick things off, looking at the top half of the bracket. And the first game is tomorrow at 6 o'clock between Bishop Lures and Bluffton. These two met in the regular season. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. It was earlier in the season. It would have been in September, I think, if my memory serves me well. And that went to 5 sets. And Bluffton lost to Bishop Lures. It was August 28th. I take that back. They lost to Lures in 5 sets, 3-2. I think Bluffton had a chance to even win that match, and Bishop Lures came away with a great comeback to win it in 5 sets. I think with Bluffton, I think they're gonna have some revenge from that game, and I think Bluffton wins this match in 4 or 5 sets. I like what I've seen from Chloe Garrett, their freshman this year. Cameron All, their sophomore setters, having a nice year for the Bluffton Tigers. They're a young team. They're gonna play tough. They're gonna be a hardworking team, but I think Bluffton's got a pretty decent draw, and I think they'll at least have an opportunity to get to the championship game. I like what I've seen from Bluffton, at least enough to get past Bishop Lures in the first round of sectionals. Thursday, we'll wrap up the first round slave games, beginning at 6 o'clock contest between Woodland and Adams Central. The Jets have been one of the top teams in the ACAC for a couple years. They've graduated some talent. They are definitely having a down season. They did lose every game in their conference. It's a good ACAC volleyball conference. 13-16 on the season are the Jets, but I think there's some pieces to build upon for the future, led by Emma Hershey, their sophomore outside hitter. Nice year for Emma Hershey. However, they got a pretty brutal draw against the Woodland Warriors. We'll talk about Woodland in a matter of moments. But Woodland's definitely going to give Adams Central some trouble. Maybe it's a competitive 3 or 4 sets, but I think Woodland takes care of business against the Jets. In the second game of the Thursday night doubleheader, Blackhawk Christian against South Adams. Many would say South Adams would be favored on paper. However, I will have to stress here, Blackhawk Christian is not your typical Class 2A program. They do play some high-level competition. They're 12-15, but I think they're a pretty good team. I think all things considered. I think you look at CC Sefton, their freshman with 228 kills. You got the two trees of Jalen Pickett and Ellie Crease combining with 82 blocks. I think that's a problem for South Adams on paper, a team that does lack size in the middle. Could be a problem in this matchup, and I think Blackhawk Christian has to be looked at as a trap. And you got that first game against between South Adams and Blackhawk Christian. That's got to be a trap game right there because the size of Blackhawk Christian could be problematic for South Adams, especially if they don't serve well and they commit a lot of errors. If Reagan Bullenbacher, we'll talk about her in a moment, if she don't have the best of games, this could be a 4 or 5 set game. I like South Adams still, but I think this is going to be a closer game than people think. So let's talk about Woodland and South Adams, because I think those are going to be the two teams that I think are going to be the likely contenders in this section. We're going to begin with the Woodland Warriors. Woodland finished second, I believe, in the ACAC 5-1 in conference play. 22-7 on the season for the Woodland Warriors, a team that beat South Adams twice in the regular season, both come in the last 2 weeks in the ACAC tournament and the regular season. I believe it was 2-1 in the championship, if I recall, and then it was 3-0. I think it was either 3-0 or 3-1. Not too long after that, it was 3-1 against South Adams in the regular season at South Adams. So Woodland's had success against South Adams. They beat them last year in the sectional finals, where Woodland won in 5 sets against the Starfires on their way to a run to the Final Four in Class 2A. Woodland's led by Alyssa Anderson. Their talented senior middle, 244 kills, 44 aces, 47 blocks. That's the thing you're gonna notice with Woodland is they are big up front. I mean, they're big. Woodland has size in the middle. They are really good on the back row. They're not necessarily the best team hitting the volleyball, but they're really good up front and they're really good in the back row. And I think that makes up for that as well. McKenna Smith is their leader in the back row as a defensive specialist. 320 digs for McKenna Smith, the senior. Tori Crozier, their senior setter, with 741 assists. Great season for her. Michaela Gruber having a nice year as well for Woodland. And then Bree Peoples, another middle with 44 blocks. So they are big in the up front. And that is going to be a problem for South Adams, a team that does not have a lot of size. I think that's going to be a problem on paper with the size of Woodland. They got a lot of really, really good athletes from basketball and softball that are on this volleyball team. And once again, the Woodland Warriors are right there knocking on the door of winning this sectional. And I think if you're Woodland, you have to feel really good about your chances in this sectional. I've liked what I've seen from Woodland of late, and I think they're playing their best volleyball right now in this season. Not to say South Adams is a bad team. I mean, they're definitely not a bad team whatsoever when we talk about the South Adams Starfires. And again, you look at Woodland. Woodland is 22-7 in the season. South Adams not too far behind them at 22-8. They're 3-3 in conference. They did kind of fade it a little bit towards the last few weeks of the regular season. They had a chance to win the conference. They've definitely fallen up a little bit as of late. But again, it's still South Adams volleyball. They're still one of the top teams in that sectional. And one of the reasons why is you have the talented senior outside hitter in Reagan Bullenbacher with 243 kills. She also averages 3.5 digs per set. So she can also get the job done on the back row when needed. You got the Beitler sisters, Reese and Reagan Beitler. Reese is just a sophomore. She leads the team with 58 aces. She's having a great year as a sophomore. Reagan Beitler, their senior setter, 311 digs, 531 assists. She will get some offense here and there as well for South Adams. So she's very much involved as a setter for the Starfires. Those three right there are going to be a big part of what South Adams is going to do on the volleyball court. And if those three have great games, they'll have a chance to win this sectional. However, the size of South Adams is a problem. And I think when you're facing a teams like Blackhawk Christian, you're playing Woodland, two teams that are going to have an advantage in the middle. The key is going to be they're going to have to hit the ball well, and they're going to have a good offensive showing. They're going to have to play clean volleyball because those two teams can definitely beat South Adams in this sectional because they have something that South Adams definitely lacks. They just do not have the size in the front row. And I think that is where I think South Adams is going to be challenged in this sectional. Will they have a chance to win this sectional? Absolutely. They have the weapons to do so, but they're going to be challenged for sure. And that first game against Blackhawk Christian is not going to be a gimme for the Starfires. And then obviously we know already with Woodland, they are the Woodland Warriors. They are really good at, at, at disrupting outside hitters and hitters for a very good reason. Woodland made it to the Final Four last year. They have that experience going for them. And I think that's where Woodland is going to be favored just so slightly on paper here. You look at the sectional as a whole. I like Bluffton to get past Lures in 5. But I have Whitco getting to the championship game in 4 or 5 sets. I've liked what I've seen from Meredith Hinball, their sophomore setter. She does everything for Whitco. I think the Cats have been sneaky this year, behind the scenes, under the radar. I think Whitco's going to surprise some people and get to the championship game, because I've liked what I'm seeing from the Cats this year. And then you look at Woodland, the bottom half of the bracket. I like Woodland in 3 against the Jets. I'll go South Adams in 4 against Blackhawk Christian. I'll take Woodland in 4 or 5 sets against South Adams. And then the championship game, I love Whitco. I love what I've seen. I love their scrappiness. I love their heart. But Woodland is just too good of a volleyball team. And I mean, even if it's South Adams, I would go that same route as well. I think either Woodland or South Adams are going to win the sectional if it happens. If it happens, I mean, I wouldn't rule out Blackhawk Christian per se, but I think I am projecting Woodland to win this sectional, repeating sectional champions. But again, it could be South Adams. It could also be Blackhawk Christian as well. We take a look at our next sectional, which is 2A Sectional 35, hosted by Central Noble. This is the all NECC sweepstakes, where every team in the sectional is from the same conference, Northeast Corner Conference. You take a look at this sectional, and it begins on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. with the Central Noble Cougars taking on the Prairie Heights Panthers. These two teams have already met twice in the regular season. CN has won twice against the Panthers, 2-0 in a tournament. They also beat them in 5 sets back on September 23rd, 3-2 at Prairie Heights. You look at Central Noble in that game against Prairie Heights in the last meeting. Grace Swink had 10 kills and 6 blocks in that win for the Cougars. Obviously, as a senior, Grace Swink's going to be a key part of Central Noble's success in the playoffs. A 9-win Central Noble team, a team that's playing much better ball towards the end of the regular season. Lily Martz had 10 kills for the Cougars, a senior outside hitter and opposite hitter, hitting .226. So 2 players with 10 kills for the Cougars. It's not a highly explosive offense, but there are a couple of kids at CN that can record some kills when need upon. You look at some of the serving, Jelena Weinbrenner with 2 aces. Martz again with 5 aces. She's been their best server all season long for the Cougars. Grace Swink, I mentioned, with 6 blocks. I mean, Grace Swink is a beast for the Cougars. She's been a beast the whole time she's been at CN. 20 dids for Candace Bales. We know her from the basketball court, so good to see that. She's just a junior. You have Katie Forker with a very impressive 44 dids against the Panthers in that game. Weinberg, 23. You got a junior in Audrey Wallace. She had 14 dids against the Panthers, and then 25 dids for once again, the senior Lily Martz. 11 dids for Grace Swank, and then 7 for Aspen Smith, another senior for Central Noble. In terms of assists, Cadence Bales also is their setter. She had 19 against the Panthers. Really, the key strength for Central Noble is their defense. They are relentless in the back row. They've always been that way for some time now, but it's definitely been better, especially up front. Now you have Grace Swink coming in the middle of the last few years, and it's definitely made a difference for Central Noble in terms of what they want to do on the volleyball court. Prairie Heights this is a rebuilding Prairie Heights team. It's definitely been that way the last couple years, but they've definitely been working their way towards the future. You got Avery Certain, a sophomore. She had 9 kills in that last meeting at CN in that contest. She also had 4 blocks in that game. You got better in Bailey Delancey. She had 21 dids and 11 assists against CN. Delancey just came away with her 1,000th career assist over the weekend in the NECC tournament. Nonetheless, I think Central Noble and Prairie Heights will be an interesting matchup to open up the sectional. I like CN in at least a slight edge for the Cougars. The other matchup is Churubusco against Westview, between the Eagles and the Warriors. Keep in mind that everybody has played each other at least once, so they obviously have some familiarity with each other. Westview played Churubusco. What was it? It was on the 18th of September. They swept Busco 3 straight, relatively easily. I mean, the third set was a lot closer than you would expect, but overall, a pretty competitive 3 sets, I think. I mean, Cherubusco, I think, is going to be an interesting team. I don't think they're the best team ever. They're 7-21. They're definitely not the team they were a year ago or 2 years ago for sure. Kelsey Coyle with 8 kills for Busco. You got Michaela Reuter, their setter. She had 11 kills against Westview. And you got another senior in Lindsay Nicodemus with 8 kills against the Warriors. Let's see here. Kelsey Coyle also has 12 dids. Reuter with 12 assists, as well as another setter and sophomore, Alyssa Geiger, with 12 assists for Cherubusco. It's a scrappy Busco team, still decently talented. I don't think they're a horrible team. I know there are teams that are probably worse than Cherubusco right now. I mean, they're 7-21, but they've lost some close games, and they've been competitive at times in the Northeast Corner Conference. But obviously, with Westview 16-13 in the season, they're going to be a team to keep an eye on. I think they have a chance to win the sectional, something they have not done since the 2015 season. I apologize, I messed up there. The last time they won a sectional championship came in that 2015 squad under where they had Grace Hales and Maria McCoy, and then that really good class they had. They had a big senior class that year, and that was the time when Westview won a sectional championship from 2012 to 2015. So they won every single year for Westview since Grace Hales and Maria McCoy came to Westview High School. And so that was the last time Westview had won a sectional championship. Chloe Yoder is just a junior, if I recall, and she just picked up her 1,000th career kill just last week for the Westview Warriors. Again, just a junior, 343 kills on the season. She's hitting, probably well over 200, 72 aces, 329 dids, 207 assists for Miss Yoder. She's on her way to amassing more career milestones for her in her career. And she's only a junior, as I mentioned earlier. Some other players to watch. I mean, you got Leia Hustetler, 327 assists for her. Again, Chloe Yoder is great in the back row, on defense as well. You look at other players, you got, Madison Grossman. Sometimes they call her Maddie Grossman. 52 blocks to lead the way as a senior. Addie Kaufman with 28 blocks as a junior. Brianna Kaufman, a senior, with 19 blocks. So they're pretty good up front. Other than Chloe Yoder and their serving, Addie has 48 aces. Lindora Schrock, a freshman, with 28 aces. Bree Kaufman with 267 dids. Alea Hosserberg with 243 dids. So this is a pretty talented Westview team. And I think it's a team to keep an eye on, because I think if they can get past Busco, which I think they will, you got a matchup with Eastside in the semifinals. And that's an Eastside team that's having their best season, 15-11 record, their best season since the 2014 season when they had a winning record there. It's been a long road back for Eastside since that last winning season. And they are going into the tournament on a bit of a losing note. I mean, actually they're 16-11. I think they're 16-11 now because they beat Fremont. So Eastside is 16-11 going into the state tournament, their best season since 2014. But Eastside is going into the sectional on a bit of a skid as of late. They have, you look at with Eastside, they've only won twice since September 20th. So this team has definitely have some struggles right now for the Blazers, and I think this is an opportunity for Westview to take advantage of that. You look at the other half of the bracket, and you got Lakeland with the bye on the other half, and Lakeland's defending sectional champions. Lakeland 15-13 on the season. This is definitely not the team they were a year ago when they won over 20 games, I believe it was, and 22 games last year, and they made it to regionals. Still a decent team, but they've definitely had their struggles this year. It's been kind of on and off 2025 season. They're going into the sectional tournament, however, playing much better ball as of late. They've only lost 3 times since September 23rd, so that means they are, 7-3 in the last 10 games. So Lakeland's definitely playing much better ball going into the sectional tournament. And you look at Lakeland, they still got Zoe Bowman, their junior right side hitter. You got Madison Larimer, their junior middle, 32 blocks for them. Junior Abriana Satterfield with 34 aces to lead the way in that category for Lakeland. Bowman with 123 kills. And a wrestler, a senior. They always get a wrestler of Lakeland for some reason. And they seem to just keep coming up to Lakeland every year. Let's see here. Larimer, 37 blocks. Maddie Oakley with 28 blocks. Morgan Hedges, just a sophomore, with 22 blocks. For Lakeland, you look at the aces. Satterfield, 39. Anna Rassler, 33. Bowman with 27. Riley Amsden their senior libero with 202 dids. Satterfield, 198 dids. Mackenzie Carlson, just a junior, 175 dids. Some familiar names from other sports, especially basketball. So this should be familiar for a lot of folks that are following the Lakeland Lakers. Satterfield also 132 kills. So it's a pretty balanced Lakeland team. Obviously, it's a tested Lakeland team. They've had some tough losses throughout the course of the season. But this Lakeland team, they have something that most of these teams, or none of these teams have, is that they won a sectional last year. So they have that sectional titles events going for them, going into the state tournament and whatnot. And so Lakeland definitely has had, and then they've had success in the NECC. They're 6-4 against the NECC in the regular season this year. So Lakeland does have success going for them in conference play. As far as predictions go, and I think we're just going to go ahead and go right into the bracket itself and then kind of forecasting what's going to happen. Again, we're just going to go ahead and start off with the first game, which is Central Noble Prairie Heights. Again, Central Noble is the host of Sectional 35. I got CN winning that one. I'm going to go CN in 4, but I can see this go 5. It could also be Prairie Heights advancing. It's also possible. It is hard to beat the same team 3 times in a row. In the first round, Busco, Westview. I think Westview sweeps Busco, but it will be a competitive 3 sets. I don't think Busco's a bad team. I think Westview is just simply the better team, and they're the more experienced team. In the semifinals, Lakeland and Central Noble. I think CN lost to Lakeland in 3 or 4 sets. In the regular season, I like Lakeland all across the board, except for the middle. I think Central Noble may have a little bit more of a competitive edge in the front row, led by Grace Swank. Maybe the back row CN maybe can get some dids and maybe can put up some swing points here and there. But overall, I think Lakeland's just the overall better team than Central Noble. I like the Lakers in 4. And then East Side against Westview. This is a scrap. This is a very hardworking East Side team. I know the athletes are there at East Side, and so it's good to see the Blazers finally getting some success. Unfortunately, I don't have any stats for East Side. They were not provided to me whatsoever, so I can only go by what I know with East Side. But I know I already know just from what the kids there are at East Side. There are athletes there, and so finally it's about time the East Side's finally getting some success here. But unfortunately, their run's probably going to come to an end in the semifinal round. I got Westview in 4 against East Side, and so in the finals sets up a LaGrange County Civil War, Lakeland versus Westview. And Westview has had their struggles against Lakeland in the past. They lost to Westview in the regular season in 4 sets, but did beat them in the conference tournament. So again, this is kind of that third game, right? That swing game, that decisive game of the meeting between Lakeland and Westview. Who's going to take the decisive edge in the Lakeland and Westview series this time around? I'm going to go Westview. I'm going to take Westview to end the streak, and I think Westview wins their first sectional since 2015. I'm going to go Westview in 5 sets, and I think the Warriors hang on to win the sectional championship. But again, you look at Westview, you look at Lakeland. I think those are the 2 most likely teams. I think Eastside definitely has a fair chance of winning the sectional. Central Noble, crazy things can happen. Central Noble can make a run to the sectional championship. It is very possible. But I think at the end of the day, I like either Lakeland or Westview a little bit more. And I'm leaning towards the veteran Westview squad to finally get over the hump and winning the sectional championship at CN. All right, our final sectional we're going to talk about in 2A is Sectional 34, hosted by Bremen. Bremen Lions out of the Indiana Northern States Conference. The Bremen Lions hosting that sectional. And you look at this sectional, and most of these teams, they are in that particular conference, except for Winnemat, they're in the Hoosier North, and South Bend Career Academy, they're in the Hoosier Plains Conference. But all things considered, we're really going to be focusing on the Bremen Lions for sure. And then we're looking at potentially maybe Jimtown can make a run to the sectional finals. And then you got Winnemat, and Winnemat's rebuilding. I should take that back. They're a 7-win team. Really, you look at this sectional, Bremen should be favored pretty considerably to win this sectional, but I think there's going to be at least one team that's going to give Bremen a little bit of trouble. And I think it could potentially be Jimtown, just because the rivalry with Bremen and Jimtown is very strong. And so we have to mention at least the fact there's a possibility that it could be maybe Jimtown could make a run and maybe give Bremen some trouble. But really, on paper, Bremen should be favored. I mean, they were 22-8 on the season. They just finished second in the conference in a share with John Glenn, right? So Bremen has had success this year in the Northern States Conference. A lot of success this year for the Bremen Lions. You look at this team with Bremen, they're led by the junior Tegan Feathers with 297 kills. Senior Emma Kincaid is their setter, 671 assists for her. We know her from basketball, so that shouldn't surprise anybody that Kincaid's doing well for the Bremen Lions. We got Sarah Salhoff with 268 dids. Aces are led by Kinsey Greenewalt with 61 aces for the Bremen Lions. So very talented Bremen team that I think gets overlooked a little bit because of the hype in 2A regarding Southwood. And so there's definitely a lot of attention going away from Bremen, but I think this is a pretty good Bremen team that should make a run to at least win a regional championship and at least trying to get to semi-state. I think that's very possible for the Bremen Lions, depending on how things line up with the regionals. I haven't even looked at the regional pairings yet, so I'm just saying that Bremen does have that potential going for them. Feathers also has 58 blocks on the season. Kincaid with 44. Elena Grubbs with 37. That's another basketball name for Bremen. So we know the athletes are there for Bremen. They do have some size, so Bremen is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the middle. And that's the thing with Bremen is they have a lot of athletes. I know this because of basketball. They got some really good athletes from multiple sports, and this Bremen team, they are a powerhouse right now for the Lions, and they're going to be right there in the thick of things. They got some depth. They got some athletes at Bremen, and I think we're going to see that in this postseason. This is a sectional, like I said, it's not a very strong sectional on paper. So when you look at the sectional draw, I mean, Bremen versus LaVille. Bremen swept LaVille in the regular season. I would expect the same here. I'd be shocked if it's super competitive. Winnemat's only won 7 games this year. I don't remember if they've played Bremen at all. Let's see. I don't think they did, but either way, I still like Bremen over Winnemat. And then you look at the other half, you got Jimtown and Knott's. Knott's is a 12-win team, definitely not the best team in that conference, in the Northern States Conference. They got swept by Bremen in the regular season, and they've also struggled with Jimtown. They lost to Jimtown in 5 sets, and then they lost again in a tournament at New Prairie in 2. The Jimmies are probably, if we're going to look at a team that's going to potentially give Bremen a little bit of trouble, it's probably going to be Jimtown. Jimtown's 11-18 on the season, but they're 3-2 in the Northern States Conference. They're the only team in that conference not named John Glenn that has given Bremen all kinds of trouble. I mean, they only lost to Bremen 2-1 in the Westview Invitational. They lost to Bremen in 4 sets in the conference. So they have been competitive this year against Bremen. And they're probably the only team I look at and say they're probably a legitimate team that can give Bremen some trouble. And you look, even if you go even further than that, in that last meeting in 4 sets, 3 of those 4 games were decided by less than 5 points. So Jimtown is very much in the thick of things, I think, in this section. And the record's very deceiving for the Jimtown Jimmies. And again, when you got a rivalry between Jimtown and Bremen, all stats are thrown off the table, if you would, with the Jimmies and the Lions. It's one of the big rivalries in that area of the states. And you looked at the Jimmies. You got Flaherty Harder, 171 kills. Kaylin Dunnan, just a freshman, 300 assists. Harder again with 223 dids and 53 aces for once again for Miss Dutton. So it's a young Jimtown team, but it's a Jimtown team that's scrappy. They're a team that doesn't quit. They're a young Jimtown team, and I think that's the thing with the Jimmies. They're young. They got some energy. They're going to play with that no pressure mentality for the Jimmies, and I think the draw is pretty favorable for Jimtown to make a run to the sectional finals. And you never know what could happen when you get to the sectional finals. So I think when you look at this pairings, I think I'm going to make this one pretty quick because this is not a very strong sectional. All things considered, especially with South Bend Career Academy, only 3 wins on the season. They're playing the Hoosier Plains Conference, so yeah, they're not a great South Bend Career Academy team. So I expect the winner of Jimtown Knots to go to play for the championship. I don't like Career Academy. Let's see, Bremen LaVille. I think LaVille might be more competitive this time around against Bremen, but I expect the Lions to eventually sweep the LaVille Lancers. I have Bremen also sweeping Winnemat in the semifinals, and then I have Jimtown beating Knots. I'm going to go back to the 4 or 5 game route for that one because that was competitive the first time around, or the second time around, I should say. So I have the Jimmies beating Knots in at least 4. I'm just saying, I'm going to assume it goes 5, though, just because Jimtown and Knots are pretty even teams. And then the winner of that game is going to beat Career Academy in 3 because Career Academy is just bad. And then the championship game, I would have Bremen against Jimtown. And let's see here. I have Bremen against Jimtown in the sectional finals, and let's be honest, I got Bremen winning this thing. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3-set sweep, but again, because it's Jimtown, I'm not expecting a sweep. So probably it's gonna be at least 1 set where Jimtown does play better than what we expect them to. So I'm gonna say Bremen in 4. but I do expect the Lions to win the sectional. They're pretty heavy favorites to win the sectional. It's one of the easier sectionals to predict on paper. I would honestly take Bremen and to win that sectional. And boy, last 2A is going to be very interesting if things line out like we think it might. So, yeah, with Bremen, you got Bremen and Woodland and South Adams, Southwood. You got the Muncie schools. It's going to be a fun Class 2A state tournament nonetheless. And so tune in next time where I will be discussing Class 3A and 4A. We'll be late on 3A a little bit because there are a couple games that will be starting tomorrow for the ANEC area. But personally, I just don't have time to talk about 3A tonight. I will talk more about that tomorrow night or Wednesday, depending on what happens with the schedule and whatnot for me. I maybe prepare for Wednesday. I'll probably have a 3A, 4A preview set up for Wednesday to get ready for Thursday's slate of games. All right, so that will do it here, and see you next time.